Okay, so good evening, I suppose already, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our final panel of the day, which concerns the issues of quite a new narrative in foreign policy and foreign relations of both Ukraine and all the countries of the Central European region, and that is their relations with the Global South. And regional, or should I say mega-regional, because Global South is quite a vast array of countries throughout different geographical, political, and informational spheres. So let us, for this panel, call it a mega region of foreign relations. We do see a lot of complexity within this region. We do see a lot of misunderstanding or even, let's say, hostility towards Ukraine being an active part of communication with that region. But that's the problem not only for Ukraine, but also for all of the countries trying to rediscover Global South for themselves, for their security, for their economy, and for their political relations. And that is the main reason why today we are ought to speak about how can we as Central European nations, how can we as Ukraine, how can we as experts, politicians and specialists approach the issues with Global South. And so our today's panelists are Omar Ashour, Professor of Security and Military Studies at Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Maybe some applause in order to show that you're alive still. Then we have Lukas Ivanauskas, Policy Analyst at Osmos. Also today representing to you Valentin Nicolescu, Professor of the Diplomatic Academy of Romania. And for the Ukrainian part of our wonderful panel, Olena Bordilovska, expert on Southeast Asia. And Olga Vorozhbit, journalist at Ukrainian Week or Ukrainski Tizhdень Journal. Please welcome. Our main goal is to encompass as wide a range of issues and questions as possible. And so let us start with Mr. Ashour. So you had a great number of lectures and presentations during the last weeks in Ukraine concerning your book and your new educational course on how did ISIS fight and how all the developments in the Middle East can affect Ukraine and other countries. What can we learn from that approach? And also you're a well-renowned expert, both within Ukrainian and international information sphere, on the rediscovering Middle East and Eastern countries, basically for, let's say, Western-leaning audience. So my question is as follows. How do you think, what is the best appropriate Ukrainian approach to the Middle East? How can we interest Middle Eastern countries in Ukraine? And to that extent, what is interesting for Middle Eastern countries concerning Ukraine, its experience, its resources, potential, etc., etc.?
Well, thank you. First, thank you for the very kind invitation. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. And second, you did not give me these questions in before, so now I'm not... anyway, I prepared something, but I'll tailor it to that. Well, there are multiple dimensions here. For the first, the issue of the Global South, I was more general. The definition, you made it easier for me because now it's just the Middle East. But for the Global South, it's just putting the analyst hat on. You always need to tailor the message. You find the right messenger, you find the right medium, but you need to know the audience. So, like the Global South, the Middle East is very complex. Countries in there have very different and conflicting policies, even if they are neighbors. Algeria and Morocco almost went to war. The UAE and Qatar almost went to war. And Egypt and Libya actually went to war. So things are very... This is away from the Arab-Israeli conflict by its own, which is part of it is ongoing right now. So, okay. First, I will go to why. Why do we need the Middle East and the Global South? What does Ukraine needs to enhance its relationship with the Middle East and the Global South? Part of it, it's the diplomacy, right? This is like the Global South is about 78 countries, so almost 40% of the UN General Assembly votes. It has some of the richest countries are there, like Qatar and Kuwait, and some of the poorest countries are there, like the Central African Republic and Sudan, but they provide gold for Russia. So you need to also address this dimension. So they have resources in that sense, and that resources affect Ukraine in a direct way. this is the other issue. The issue of resources brings us to the issue of the economics. Many countries, including in the Middle East, are basically holds for the sanctions regime against Russia. That's the most famous and the richest of which is the UAE, in terms of investments and trade holds for Russia. But also there is a dimension that has to do with the military dimension. I was writing a piece, an op-ed, on that particular question you asked me, but specifically on the ammunition stocks. We just talked about the defense industries in the West, and there are hundreds of thousands of tons of ammunitions plus the weapon systems, Soviet and post-Soviet produced, that are available in the Middle East and the larger global South. And we're talking all the way from Vietnam and Laos, all the way to Algeria and Morocco, and in between them. And these stocks, either Ukraine gets them, or at least spoil it for Russia so that Russia does not get them. And hence you need these. And to be more specific, because I heard the question, I think there was a question by Ihor about the air defense. So just an example. So Ukraine will need air defense munition for systems like the S-300s, like the Buk M systems, and lower systems such as the Sterlas and the Iglas and others. The Western systems there's not many of them in terms of ammunition, in terms of also the production capacity. Maybe in 12 months there will be, but right now there isn't for the RSTs, for the NASAMs. The Patriots are very expensive, and as you know, so hence you will need for the air defense to get as fast as possible the munition stocks that are available elsewhere, but also a lot of them in the global South. So these are the whys. The hows, well, you need primarily let's put it this way: you either charm them or you give them money. So one of the two. So since the money is scarce, so you need to charm them, and the way to charm them is to have a good strategic communication policies. Ukraine and many countries in East Europe suffered from colonialism. Africa, and that's the story of Africa, the story of Latin America, and story of many parts of the Middle East. Suffered from this is a war of liberation. This is an anti-colonial war against a colonial power that just got away with what it colonized for a while. This is also a situation where you have multiple forced deportation. People are being extracted from, forcibly deported, which is also a story in the global South and parts of the Middle East. This is an area where you have an intense colonial settler activities. Over 500,000 and owning Crimea, plus the Donbass, plus colonial settlements in Mariupol and elsewhere. So the connection with what the global South suffered from historically and contemporary is pretty much there. So in terms of your strategic communication policy, this needs to be very well integrated and sustained. The other dimension is when you address some of it's a very sensitive region, the Middle East. Again, I mentioned the diversities between different countries, and there is a history between them. So the level of expertise in these about these countries and about these regions, and we can thank here the Catholic University because they have a Middle East program, or it's ongoing there. But it really needs to be a bit in depth, and do not. What I can say, do not ignore the expert advice and the advices of some of the specialists in the region, whether officials or unofficials. They can give a good feedback in terms of giving that, shall we say, formulating the strategic communication policies and the statements of the higher level officials. And this will fall a lot on the MFA on one side, especially the public diplomacy, but also on the international cooperation department in the Ministry of Defense. So these need again to get involved and get consulted on what is the better way in terms of approaching these countries.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashour. And you made a very valid point that Ukraine and both other countries of Central Europe and Eastern Europe, as it was previously called, should have a strategic narrative, strategic approach towards the global South countries.